Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Today on the show, I would like to welcome Sonna Johns, who is an inspiring personal empowerment coach and speaker. With a rich background that includes coaching Fortune 500 companies, being a national spokesperson for Comcast, and excelling in corporate sales and marketing, she has navigated numerous professional and personal challenges, all while being a single mom of two. 4 years ago, she made a pivotal decision to leave a high-profile relationship, embarking on a profound journey of self-discovery and empowerment. This transformation led her to become a dedicated personal empowerment coach, committed to helping others find their path to self-love and empowerment. Get ready to be inspired by her incredible story and the wisdom she's gained along the way. Welcome, Sonna.
Thank you so much, Summer. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for that beautiful intro.
It's a pleasure to have you here on the Core Women Podcast. Before we dive into your professional journey, if you could describe your journey in one word to this point, what would that word be and why?
I would just use the word empowered, and I mean empowerment in every sense of the word. And there are so many words that come to mind, honestly, but if I had to choose one, empowered, because I believe that empowerment has so many aspects to it. You know, it's inner empowerment, it's confidence, it's worthiness, and it just is everything. So that would be the word.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Let's talk about some of the milestones in your life that brought you to this moment, to this place where you feel empowered and have really created a journey you are passionate about. So let's talk about those personal experiences.
You know, it's been a long journey in my professional and personal life. And as we know, all the things have led us to where we are today. It shapes us to where we are. And, you know, I've been a single mom for many years. Before that, I was, on TV and doing commercials and spokeswork and things like that. Then I went into training and facilitation. And then after I went through a difficult divorce, I got into working into the corporate world, marketing, sales, overseas transactions, things like that, and building relationships. And I learned a lot in that realm, which I bring into my coaching. But there were also personal things that would pop up along the way that have been a theme, like an underlying theme throughout my life. And I think that pertains to a lot of people. And, we go through our life and we really don't realize it at the time until there's this one aha moment that you think, okay, I really have to step back and assess what's going on. Now, this happened to be about 10 years ago. And then I thought I was in the clear. I thought, I've conquered everything. Like I've learned what I need to learn in this lifetime, right? Well, I'm humble to say that I am continuously learning today. And I didn't learn all the lessons 10 years ago. So I've learned more lessons. And I think that that's really what life's all about, is our evolution. And in the midst of all those obstacles, the one thing that brought me back to myself was really listening and tuning into my body and just knowing that something just wasn't right and something had to change. Like I knew that just something else was meant for me. So it kind of led me to where I am today. Now we can break that down, but that's like a 30,000 foot view.
Thank you for that and giving us the overall or the general picture of what that evolution looked like for you. But I do want to take a step back because you do mention the word themes. What were some of the themes that kept coming up for you during that time of reflection, that time of change in your life? Because I think it's really interesting that you did recognize themes, but what were those themes and how did you, in fact, recognize those to come back to self?
So the themes were patterns of difficult relationships or even working in environments that weren't really healthy and allowing people to upset you, take your power away, and then stepping into that people-pleasing mode. And I know we use that word a lot, but it's true. We get into the people-pleasing, meaning that we just don't want to rock the boat. We want to do the right thing. And I've always been like, okay, I want to be classy about this. I don't want to make any waves. And so I didn't really speak up. And I always gave people the benefit of the doubt, because I try to see the other person for who they are. Like maybe they've had some issues or some wounds. But then I realized that I was compromising myself by doing that. It's okay to be compassionate and understand people, but at the same time, you can't betray yourself. And I felt like over time, I wasn't speaking up in some of my relationships. And even though I knew that something needed to change and I tried to speak up, you can speak up all you want, but if it doesn't happen, if things don't fall into place, that's when we really need to step back and go, okay, what are the signs here? What is the universe telling me that isn't right about this? And I was getting into situations that just weren't with people that were aligned with who I was. And the good thing is that I never lost my humility and who I was. But to a certain point, I did get caught up in life, caught up in things, caught up in doing things like we all do. And it could be at work, because I got really burnt out in the corporate world. That's a whole other chapter. But even in our personal lives and relationships, we get so caught up into the events of the daily life and doing things that we don't take time to really think about how we really feel. Is this really aligned with who we are? So, 4 years ago, right before quarantine, I had been in a relationship for a significant amount of time. And I knew deep down in my soul that something wasn't right. And it just occurred to me that I needed to really dig deep. And even though I kept trying to figure it out, I couldn't. But then I started to feel it physically. I started to feel just physically not feeling right, and things were off. And it was just like the message just kept coming in, just something isn't off. And obviously I wasn't as happy. I knew something was off. And, long story short, I decided to step out of a very significant relationship. And it was very hard for me because I had thought like, oh, this is the next chapter of my life. It was a lot of grieving for what I thought my life was going to be. And I always talk about don't fall in love with the potential. That was me. Okay. So yes, there were things that I fell in love with, but we also tend to idealize situations and think, oh, well, it'll get better or things will change. And what you see is what you get. Whatever you're in is really the way it is. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but if something's really not feeling right, you have to listen to your intuition. And that is what I finally did. So I made a huge move. I did a complete 180, started my life pretty much all over again. New friends, new circles, new job, new everything. And I dove deep into my spiritual practice and my prayer and meditation. I was in solitude for probably 3 or 4 months. I'm not kidding, like in my house by myself. My kids were out, they've been independent forever. And I just really sat with everything. And that was an awakening for me. It wasn't easy for a while, but now, oh my God, like it is the most beautiful decision I could ever make to choose myself.
I love that. Thank you for digging so deeply there, because I think that many times we just kind of graze the surface. We graze the surface of the way that we look at things, the way we choose to go on. But you made some huge decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship, your own profession, how you looked at life and how you were going to continue that. I love what you said. Don't fall in love with potential. Well, that's a biggie.
It's a
I mean, because
biggie.
I think a lot of us do that. What could be? And there's hope and there's potential, but what you see in front of you, the reality of what is going on, we disconnect from that sometimes. It's what is happening right here is so significant that is impacting my well-being, my health, my spirit, my soul, how I process things, how I function on a day-to-day basis. That's tough to get back to that point and come to this reality of, all right, I'm seeing this. Am I going to listen? And that's where I want to get into this question about how did you listen to that inner voice? How did you say, okay, it's time to actually listen and stop thinking about the potential. It's time to start not neglecting, not just that intuition, that inner voice, that muse, whatever's telling you something's not quite right here. What brought you back to that point where you said, okay, it's time to make some changes? And then when you did, what were some of the first steps that you did? I think you mentioned that you were a bit reclusive. You took some time, 3 or 4 months to yourself. You disconnected from some of those old connections that really weren't supporting or weren't going to be healthy for you. So, what would you suggest to others who are going through something like this to listen to their intuition, their muse? What would you say? Because that's a tough place to be, especially when there's going to naturally be so many shifts.
Yes. And going into the unknown is very hard for people. It's almost easier for people to stay in the discomfort or the limbo of a relationship or a situation. And this could be applied to a job too, or a relationship. Obviously, we're talking about a relationship here. But if we're in that limbo state and we're in that uncertainty, sometimes we'd rather be in that and be in a hopeful thought process. And there's nothing wrong with having that hope and working from a pure heart. But we have to look at the reality that over time, if things aren't changing, because everything is in divine timing. So, you can tell somebody all day, look, if it's not changing, what you see is what you get, you need to get out. No, you can't do that. Like, we have to work on our own timeline, our own divine timing. And with me, I feel like it wasn't resonating with my soul. Like, I just wasn't feeling comfortable. And yet I was willing to do what it took to become comfortable, knowing that I had to go through the discomfort first, because I knew my world was going to change, and it did. And it's changed in a beautiful way. And so, getting back to your original question, I feel like when we get more signs, because I'm big on signs, if we get those nudges or more difficult situations come up, and especially when they're condensed. So, let's say something's happening on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, something that comes into your forefront. But let's say it's more condensed and things are happening more continuously. That's when we have to step back and go, okay, there is a reason why this is coming up. There's a reason why these situations are not going the way I want. Our hearts want to believe that there's the potential. But when we get caught up in that potential and we're not realistic about what is truly the truth of this situation, that's when we really start to betray ourselves. But again, it's all in timing that we start to choose ourselves. And that's why I always say, when you're ready to choose yourself, your world will change and the world around you will change. Your families will change, your friends will change, the world will change, because you get to a place where you really find who you truly are, which is really pure love. We're all pure love at our core, but we've just been conditioned for so long, and we don't want to make these uncomfortable changes in our life, knowing that there could be a beautiful outcome in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. I do want to take a bit of a slight detour here because you mentioned the word betrayal of oneself. Let's talk about, how do we betray ourselves? Can you dig a little deeper about what that means?
When we betray ourselves, we're not speaking up when we need to. And there's a way to speak up in a kind, loving, firm way. Okay. It's setting boundaries. It's really listening to what we need and being able to express it and not assuming that people need to know. That's staying small. If we stay small for others, and that's a big self-betrayal, not really speaking our voice, speaking our truth. And people always think there's a negative to, like, oh, I'm going to speak my truth and this and that. It doesn't mean to be in a uppity, snobby, I'm better than you way. It's just in a kind, loving way, because when we have boundaries for ourselves, it's self-respect. That means that we're taking the time to love ourselves. Self-betrayal is also staying in situations that we know deep down in our soul is not good. It's not good for us. It's not good for where we are in our lives, and staying in it. That's what I think the ultimate self-betrayal is staying in situations that we know are not for our highest good. And when we do not listen to our inner voice, our intuition, because we are very powerful beings and we do have intuition. I mean, I'm very faith-based, and I really feel strongly like when we just tap into our inner power and just take some stillness out of our day to connect to ourselves and God, source, that we are able to receive the guidance, maybe not in that moment, but we will receive the guidance throughout the day, through that week, the next month. We're going to get it because we're in the energy of wanting to receive, okay, what are our next steps? What do I need to know about this situation?
Well, thank you for that. Let's talk about how you can support others as a personal empowerment coach.
I usually work as a guide, a mentor, a coach. I'm very big on accountability. And I'm able to really see the light in others and really help them to cultivate that light that they have, that they may not know that they have, and expound on that. And the life experiences that I've had, personally, professionally, dealing with a lot of difficult personalities throughout my life, a lot of toxic situations, and also being in the work environment of the corporate world and experiencing burnout, being a single mom and having it really affect my overall well-being. I feel like I bring a lot of elements to the table, like a lot of wisdom. So I'm able to really work with people in a very customized way because I've pretty much been where they have in some way or another, even though it's not the same exact story. So I feel like I have the ability to do that. And I also think that energy matches are really important. A lot of times when I work with somebody, there's just an instant energy. And when we have that energy, the sky is the limit. As you know, Summer, we love to have that support system and somebody that believes in us and somebody that can encourage and support us. And it's hard to do this journey alone.
It certainly is.
We need community. We need support. We need coaches. We need mentors. We need friends. We need people that are going to be there to really support us because we're in big times of change right now. And we need all that support we can get.
Absolutely. There's so many ways, and everything I've heard today is really tapping into that intuition, the energy, the matched energy with you and the person that you're going to coach or the teams that you're going to coach, your life experiences, the conditioning that we've taken on and held as our own for so long that maybe it doesn't align with who we are, and to revisit what that conditioning is and maybe take a deeper look at that. And I think you'd be great at helping people with all of these things, to include accountability. So there's so much here that we've covered and so much that I think you can support people in so many different ways. So as we come to the close of the interview, my last question is, if you were to give the listeners one tip about listening to their inner voice, their intuition, what would that be?
Be as authentic as you can. Just be real, be who you are, and listen to your inner voice. Don't think about what anybody else thinks about you or how it's going to be perceived by anybody. That is the most important thing. You have to be true to yourself.
I love that. Thank you, Sonna, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
It has been a pleasure. You can follow Sonna Johns on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Sonna Life Coach, on Facebook at Sonna Life, and at sonnalife.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.